Hi friends, welcome to episode 81. It's going to be really hot today. Temperature is going to rise to about 31 degrees out there. It is absolutely beautiful morning. 6:30 in the morning, it's already 18 degrees. So yeah, I brought some frozen water with me to work on this. Anyway, this weekend I've got a load of goodies in the car, which I'll get out in a minute. And I'm hopefully, fingers and toes crossed. I know I didn't get round to doing it last week because I sort of run out of time. I know this is all very slow and painful, is to do that bit around the wheel arch. I just want to make a start on it, but that's going to be quite a bit of work, I think, to get that sorted out. And yeah, so another weekend at the barn in glorious weather. Right, let's get started. Unfortunately, that glorious weather, and here's a picture of the fields, was going to sort of spoil the weekend a bit for me because it got really hot, unbearable inside the barn. I know I'd probably say this before, weather is a big factor. When it's cold, it's often a few degrees colder in the barn. I mean that quite seriously. You step outside, you notice straight away it's a bit warmer, and you think, oh, how's it got warm? But then this weekend, it was baking hot inside the barn. The ceiling, the roof of the building had warmed right up, and I couldn't get rid of that heat because there's no air movement in there. So it was unbearable. Going upstairs on the RT was an issue. And Nick, who came down to clean his DMS, he noticed how bad it was going upstairs on his bus. So yeah, best thing to do is stay down on the ground. But it wasn't a particularly nice weekend for the heat. But I got a few things done. So anyway, should we start? I did say I brought lots of goodies, didn't I, in the car? The sort of stuff you can't really carry on public transport. A quick run through. A very big thank you to Mark Davis, Gordon Ford, and Rob at Routemaster Preservation. These are RT window pans, and they're getting quite hard to get hold of. The ones I've got on the current RT are a little bit scabby, and they've got some of the old, what I call metal moth, and started rusting away. These will need to be rubbed down and sprayed over at some point. So work's still necessary on these if I put them up on the bus. Although I may do an experiment later on and put one up just to check I've got my sizes right on that wood. On the left-hand side, just in case you didn't think I ever washed my overalls, yes, I do. Every week I clean my overalls. I've actually got 4 pairs of them. These are the old ones that are all ripped and shredded. But I tend to like using them until eventually they fall apart. Right, now, just moving over here to the goodies for the bus. That thing at the top, that's this brown coloured thing, that's one of the units that go over, a little bit of metal that goes over the top of the window pans. As I'm by a Routemaster, I'll show you. That's a Routemaster one, which is a lot more decorative. But these are actually quite hard to get hold of. And what tends to happen is they get bashed on the side. And this little panel's got a tiny little lip on it, and the panel gets lost. So they're a bit difficult to get hold of. Just underneath there, that Value Max thing, that's a what's called a mastic gun, or a chalking gun, or whatever you want to call it. I broke my chalking gun when I was up at work the other day. I was using it for some very, how can I say, sort of concrete-like glue, and it broke the mastic gun. So I had to get another one, so a replacement. This thing here, I bought that on Amazon. I checked that out at work. It wasn't very nice. It's a really cheap and nasty, tiny socket set because I got a few very tiny screws and bolts and things that my large socket set, which is just sitting there, can't cater for. So yeah, so I had to get that. And then there's a huge pile of bolts and nuts and bits and pieces here. That's come from GWR Fasteners, who have been really good in supplying some of the sort of traditional stuff that you're not able to get hold of easily. So for my bolts, I'm now using GWR Fasteners. For my screws and all of that stuff, I still use my friend Tony at Vintage Screws because he's really good for wood screws. Anyway, over here, We have breakfast. Well, no, not really. But yeah, there's that frozen bottle of water that I brought down today because we've got no fridge down here. Then I've got it will be breakfast actually. That's my tuna roll, some apples, and if anyone turns up later on, we're going to have a share out of the Jaffa cakes. So, right, that's that little pile of stuff. Time to get going. Yep, work on the frame is still going on. It's going to go on for a little bit longer as well. There are my tools. Anyway, I needed to get, with the delivery of fresh bolts from that firm, GWR Fasteners, whatever, other suppliers are available. I point out, they're not sponsoring me. But anyway, yeah, so having got these bolts, I needed to sort of get them into the frame. Now, I put that wood in there about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks back, and there are really quite permanently adhered inside that bracket. Yeah, I keep dropping things, unfortunately. What I'm doing is I'm putting a bolt in from above, and then from below I'm putting a washer, a spring clip thingy, or whatever you want to call it, a spring washer, and the bolt. So every now and then I have to keep climbing down onto the floor to find out where has it gone under the bus. I know I joked about this before, but I call the floor the Bermuda Triangle. So much stuff disappears down crevices in the RT and is never seen again. So anyway, there's popping that in there. These were the ones that were quite easy to get to, but there was another hole just alongside it. I had to buy a special drill attachment, some sort of cheap thing from Amazon. What it does is I couldn't get the drill bit in so it would go straight because the drill itself sort of protrudes out a bit, and because the hole is only, I don't know, whatever, a centimetre, half an inch or so from the frame, my drill would always end up drilling sort of wrongly. It'd end up sort of popping out where it shouldn't do. So I bought this thing, it's a little angle drive thing, in order that I could get that final bolt in. And it sort of worked, I must admit. It didn't do too bad a job. The drilling here, I've managed to actually get it to work, funny enough. It's actually gone right the way through, and it's gone through the bit of the bracket where it should do. So yeah, boring stuff, I know, but it has to be done. And frankly, once I put those bolts in there, you could probably hold off that wood. You could probably sort of take the entire weight of your body. I think the only things likely to fail are those brackets at the end. That was the best heading I could think of, panels and things, because it does describe panels and things. Right, now, with the arrival of the new window pans, it's also time to get on with some of the other bits and pieces. Now, there's two panels that were on the near side of this that I'm actually keeping. One is this nicely indented panel, specially indented, that sits between that last window and the platform, and then down by the fuel filler is it's like a shaped piece of beading with a metal infill. So I'm going to keep that as well. So those two things got to be paint stripped, and given it is really warm, I thought it was a good time to get started. Right, so I thought I'd kick off with this panel first. That's that one you saw earlier on that sits over the platform, or just by the platform. Yeah, it's a special panel, so anything that's sort of like that, anything that's shaped, I'm going to retain for the time being. So this one and that fuel one that you can just see just about in back of shot, I've got to be paint stripped, or at least have the paint removed. Now, I've sort of learnt a bit of a lesson over the years. I used to use lots and lots of paint stripper on this side of stuff. But what I now do is I attack it with a sander first if I can, especially with a flat panel. This slightly dish panel has got lots of dents in it. So I had a go years ago at trying to fill it and lose some of them, but it still looked pretty crappy. So I needed to sand it back, and this little orbital sander is quite useful for that. So I'll drop as much of the paint off as I can. Then I'm going to attack it with paint stripper, and then once that's done, fill it. So that was the plan of action before I started on the that little fuel filler surround. Right, so having applied some paint stripper to that previous panel, now it was a turn of this one. See what I mean? It actually consists of about 3 parts, and The aluminium, I said it was metal earlier on, apologies, but the aluminium that sits at the bottom there is cold riveted onto the beading. Now it had a couple of dents in it, and I'm using my rubber hammer just to try and straighten up that beading. That didn't work too well, unfortunately. But yeah, the beading was a little bit wonky towards the end, at the bottom there. It's had a bit of a bash. So out comes the rubber mallet. So having bashed it about a bit, it was now time to put down the rubber mallet and get the sander out. My favourite orbital sander. So yeah, the lesson I learned from years back, I mean, I'll go on about this about paint stripper. Paint stripper is a really good thing. You can use it obviously on metal, don't use it on fiberglass or anything like that, although there are special fiberglass paint strippers, but I wouldn't suggest you use them anyway. But there we are. So what I try to do is to get as much of the paint off as I can with the orbital sander or whatever sort of thing I've got laying around. And once I've got as much paint off, I then, as we've got down to the almost bare bones of it, I then apply paint stripper. Paint strippers are really nasty, messy stuff. And regretfully, as it got warmer in the shed, and I mean, you can tell in that shot there, I'm not wearing my overalls, because it was just so warm in there. So the paint stripper was drying out a little bit too quick when I put it on, because I'd done the other panel. And then I did this one and I put the paint strip on this, but they were just going off far too quick. But it's not a nice stuff to deal with, and if you can get it off this way, get yourself covered in dust, as you may notice there slightly, then yeah, do that. Anyway, so that's that panel, and here is the two panels having been attacked with a sander and a little bit of paint stripper. Right, you saw earlier on that little eyebrow that sits over the window. Now, I need 4 of these for the lower deck. I've got this one, which isn't too bad. Obviously, as you noticed earlier on, I acquired another one from Routemaster Preservation, so thanks very much, guys. So that leaves me with another 2 to find. So it's possible, unfortunately, these are tack welded to the frame itself. The one that I've got here wasn't actually welded. It was, I think it was a repair piece that had stuck over the first near side window, and it just wasn't welded on. So which is really good, because when I took the window out, it was free. But the others, unfortunately, have been tack welded on. So I need to work out how. 1 or 2 of the better ones I can actually remove, but these are as difficult to get hold of as the window pans are. Now, in no particular order, I need to get this green off of this. Right, so the keen-eyed of you will recognise that I've actually done this out of sequence, because the fuel filler panels at the back, and it hasn't yet been attempted. But yeah, so I started with this first actually, but you know, it didn't really matter. So the idea is to get all the paint off of it. Now, once this is done, once the fuel filler panel and that other little indented one are sorted out, then I'm going to spray them with the beading that I also need to do for the interior. We'll come to that later on, but first of all I need to get this out of the way. Right, so remember you saw this shot at the beginning of the video. There's the other eyebrow that I managed to buy. That one, yeah, I think I'll probably rub that right the way down again. I'll take that primer off. And those window pans clearly need a bit of the rotary sander on, especially that one at the top there, which has got a bit of rust forming on the bottom. These have been repaired. I think these are ones that have actually been on an RT, and they've been kindly repaired. So now I didn't get round to doing those 4 plus that eyebrow because I got slightly distracted with dismantling one of the other windows. Right, and here is that window. This is possibly bay 2 or maybe bay 4. Now you might recall from about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks back when I started to dismantle one of the opening pans. Unfortunately, as I was starting to take the glass out, at the very last moment it shattered. And the reason for that was, one, this rubber is completely cream crackered, and it's in parts become adhered to the glass, which you normally shouldn't do. So anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm applying some fairy liquid to the outer edge of the rubber, and I'm going to then, sort of using that old screwdriver I've got there, I'm going to run it carefully along the inside of the rubber between the glass and that, well, between the glass and the rubber seal, with the idea of spreading as much of that fairy liquid into that gap as I can. And you can see there's a couple of places where I've really struggled with a screwdriver because it was actually pretty much adhered onto there. So I then had to spend probably the next half an hour or so doing both sides of this. Right, just to prove I'll use absolutely anything I can to get that rubber off. This is like a little sharp spatula bladey thing. Now, what I want to do is I want to get that paint off that frame at some point if I'm going to use it. I'm not sure whether that one gets used, but I certainly need to get the rubber out. There's a company called Baines, which we all sort of go to for our rubber. And what I wanted to do is I've already measured the one that was in the sort of the half drop window, the one with the opening bit. I've got that measurement. And what I want to do is get this rubber out and then measure this on the bench. Now, what I've worked out for the geeky amongst you, that to do all of those side windows, plus the driver's cab window, you need roughly 30 metres, or in proper imperial measurements, 100 foot. So you need 100 foot of window rubber, and that's without doing the big back window. And I did notice that Baines have got an offer on this RT window rubber. I'm hoping it's the right one. So what I've done is I've ordered a sample, just enough to do one of the half drop windows, and if it's right, then I'm going to then I'll order that other sort of that 100 feet. Now let's use imperial, get rid of the old metric stuff. Right, so now this is the moment of, will I break this glass again, or will this actually come out? And it took me a little bit of time to work out the best way of doing it. So this has to go forwards, i.e. away from me, so as if it was coming out of the bus. So I've got to start in one corner, but I want to find the easiest corner that will give first. So I'm going to make sure that this corner's okay. I mean, it is a worry. I used to do this, just as a quick aside, I can do a Titan window in, I don't know, a quarter of the time it's taken me to do this, because Titan windows come out really easily. But sadly, I think age and all the rest of it's taken its toll. The other thing I've got to be very careful about is sticking that screwdriver in there can actually cause itself the glass to break. So I've got to be really careful with a screwdriver that I don't get any unusual sounds. In fact, you may not even get a warning for it to break. So right, so I'm trying this corner to see if this is going to be the easiest point to start with. So sometime later, there we go, right, I'm going to have a look at trying another corner. But I've got to push that down. It's got to come sort of, there you go. So it's got to go down, right? And if you have a look, you see the rubber is actually starting to move. There you go, look, you can just about see it. It is slowly, the glass, there you go. Right, so that is how it should work. Now, last time when I was doing that other window, it just shattered. Luckily, I think this frame is probably fairly malleable. It's probably more malleable, the frame, than the actual glass is. So, that, friends, is how you get it out. But unfortunately with these things, they're always easier to dismantle than they are to put back. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of swearing when I get to put that glass back into that, or maybe one of the other frames. But anyway, that did give me the opportunity now to get that rubber and measure that rubber while it was sort of out of the frame. Now the other one is I'm dreading doing those half drop windows because there's a lot more to them than these. These are simple. But I'm genuinely dreading doing the half drop. And a friend of mine, I call him Billericky Dave, he's done his as well, and he cursed them. So that's going to be a couple of weekends job at least, I think. Right, okay, let's move on. Right, do you remember these? Well, how can you forget? These are the ceiling panels, which was made my brother sort of shaped them all back in December. It was that long ago. And I put several coats of paint on these. and they're due to get their very final coat of paint that will have varnish added into it to give them a sort of a nice healthy gloss that hopefully lasts for a bit of time. Now, just below them, you've got the main sort of advert panel with a little lamp fixing in it. And then just below that, you've got this decorative piece of beading. Now, I've got the 4 big bits of beading, and they got really kind of, bearing in mind this is 30 years ago, and I took them out as carefully as I possibly could, and they still got slightly mullered. So I'm going to have to put them right. It's Sunday morning. It's about 6:30 at the moment, and it's nice and cool. Yesterday was the hottest day of the year so far, and it was unbearable in here. But anyway, time to get on with some of this. This is the beading that sits inside the bus between the ceiling and then the Rexine panel. I took this off about 30 odd years ago, and I clearly struggled with some of it because I got a few kinks in it when I took it off. It's not easy to take it off. It's quite stubborn. Some of the screws are really difficult to remove. So some of these bits have got a little bit twisted. There's one here somewhere when I find it. You can see that sort of twisting on there, and this one is probably one of the worst ones. There you go. So what I've done is I've got an old bit of softwood that I was messing around with, and I've cut a groove in here which replicates the interior of the bus. So there we go. So we pop that in there, and then tap it down with a hammer, and 1, it makes it straight, and 2, it removes any of the little kinks that are in this metalwork. Now, why am I doing this now? What I plan to do is 1804 is going out to a bus rally in a few weeks' time, and I'm going to turn this area into a little spray area again for the ceiling panels. I need to put 1 more coat of paint on the ceiling panels before they're ready to go back inside the bus. Because we're making quite a bit of progress with this, I do need to get that done in parallel. So this really is a project that needs to be done with the same coat of paint, because these should be cream. I'll point out actually, just if anyone points out a very unusual technical fact, that although at the end of the life these were actually the same colour as the ceiling, they weren't. In the London Transport Paint Guide, it shows it as the same colour as the Rexine. The Rexine is a very different shade of cream, but I think everybody's done them with the same paint they used on the ceiling. I'm not going to, so I'll continue with that. So anyway, but I need to get these done, so I'll push on. Right, so that's the my little mould in action. That's my rubber mallet, by the way. It doesn't do much damage to the beading. But at the end of fiddling around with that and thumping it about a bit, I managed to get it quite straight. So I was fairly pleased. It's still obvious it's been off, and I think a lot of people's RTs that you see out there, they're quite obvious where they've done the Rexine panel, have been removed. And I think actually looking at that, it's been removed before I removed it. So yeah, I was thinking back in the 90s of actually having that beading made up, but the trouble is you have to buy so much of it that you could probably end up doing, quite realistically, about 10 RTs. So it just wasn't worth the expenditure. But anyway, so that finished that off. Now, you may notice I have jumped about a bit in this video, as I've gone from Saturday to Sunday and Sunday back to Saturday again, and sort of fiddled around a bit. But that's the way it is, because I've tried to keep this in some sort of order. Because what I do is that this beading, for instance, I'll do this and I'll put paint stripper on them, and then I'll take the paint off, and then, you know, I'll be back to banging them around again. So there is quite a lot of this. There's quite a lot of sort of jumping around that goes on in the shed. Now, I did say I was going to look at that wheel arch, and I did make a bit of a start on it, but it's going to be a bit more of a piglet than I hoped, and I'm probably going to have to take the rear wheels off to get in underneath around the area that's rotted. And that poses me with a little bit of a problem, because what I want to do is I need to move the bus forward so I can get to the back panel, so I can do all of this work on the back of the bus. However, if I take the back wheels off, obviously I won't be able to move it. I can't move it at the moment because I've got that air leak, which if you've watched the previous editions you'll know. I could probably move it if I don't do it on the handbrake, find the brakes release. But I haven't got a cab seat in there at the moment, so that's going to make it very uncomfortable. I could put a temporary chair in there, put a big box or something to sit on, but that's a bit of a quandary. And I will, as I say, I haven't made my mind up quite what I'm going to do on that yet, but I will make my mind up over the course as the events unfold. But yeah, not a bad weekend. Unfortunately, really, that weather was a bit too much for me, to be honest with you. It was baking hot, hence the reason why I went for all these silly little tasks that don't require a huge amount of energy. But it wasn't pleasant. Good to see Nick Smith. He took his DM999 out to the Brooklands event down in Surrey. And he took people around on his bus, and he's got some fairly good reviews of that as well. So it was lovely to see Nick up there on Saturday and Sunday morning before he took his bus out. Although I wasn't in the shed when he came back, so I imagine he got back quite late. So anyway, thank you very much for that, and look forward to doing the next one. And here's some that YouTube might recommend that you might be interested in watching.